babyface.
Well, Swagu, here, let's get to the Cowboys, which is, of course, your wheelhouse here. As more news in the NFC East specific to a coordinator, Matt Eberflus, one and done. He was fired by the Cowboys earlier today, with Jerry Jones saying, quote, after reviewing and discussing the results of our defensive performance this season, it was clear that change is needed. This is the first step in that process, and we will continue that review as it applies to reaching our much higher expectations. All right, so he was the third defensive coordinator, was Eberflus, in the last 3 seasons for the Cowboys, and it's easy to see why they wanted yet another change. How about this for Cowboys ranks? Points per game, last. Pass yards per game allowed, last. Third down defense, last. Efficiency in EPA, also last. So this was a terrible defense no matter what way you slice it. But Swagu, I do think it is at least worth positing this question. Was the Cowboys defense last year more of a Matt Eberflus issue or a Cowboys defensive personnel issue?
Personnel issue. Look, Phil, ain't no good coach ever existed without good players. I tell people this all the time. Like, it's no coincidence that Seattle and the Houston Texans are playing the way they play. They got dudes all over the field. And listen, you're not going to be able to build your defenses like that. I use the two most polarizing defenses in the league. But you at least got to be able to look at a roster and say, okay, this guy is a game changer. Quentin Williams, I believe, is a game changer. I believe he can be more of the stout guy in the middle. But we know you need more. That's why we had the visceral reaction when Michael Parsons was let go from this team. It wasn't necessarily about the relationship, and I get the business part of it and all of that. But who on that defense would you line up and say, hey, man, we got to make sure we take care of this guy? No one.
Nobody. Yeah.
That was the case. So, again, Matt Eberflus is I think he's a solid defense coordinator. I don't think he's a world beater. Schematically, there are absolutely some things that they could have done differently. I would have been more of a pressure team when you don't have the personnel and just live and die by trying to put people in a bad way. So all of those things are to be discussed. But more importantly, the personnel was not good at all. So that's that.
This is how I think about the Cowboys defense. Marcus and I are both on remote right now, and we look great from top up. I love your jacket. I can guarantee you we're both wearing sweatpants.
Shorts on.
Right? You can't see it, but we got sweatpants on. That's the Cowboys defense. Up front, you got some guys. You got Quentin Williams. You got Kenny Clark. I think Donovan Ezeraku shows some stuff. The pass rush is legit. The problem is everything behind that pass rush, because there are so many issues in that back end. The linebacker group, you need corners. It was a talent issue far more so than a coaching one. And that's not to say Eberflus should have kept his job. The results are what they are. We saw a lot of coverage busts, some issues, obviously, that do stem from the scheme. But for the most part, this is a talent problem, and this is a defense that desperately needs more talent at the second and third level, and frankly doesn't have much cap space to do so this offseason.
Does that make me, since I live here in Connecticut and in studio, am I like the Texans defense then?
Yeah, I'm combined.
You're fully dressed.
I'm the Texans defense.
You're a babyface.
This is the best day of the year for me. Huge. I'm going to ask a question to you two, okay? And I'll have Marcus, you answer it first. So, like Raheem Morris, Jonathan Gannon, Jim Schwartz. Those are the names that immediately come to my mind. The Cowboys have two really good defensive tackles, right? And then speedy linebackers. Marcus, which out of those three guys do you think at least best fits at least that starting point with scheme? And then, Mina, you after him.
Raheem Morris. I think a lot of it, too, is just his experience in the secondary, Dan. Mina just pointed out how bad those guys are back there. I remember Raheem. Raheem was actually a coach at the Senior Bowl when he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when I was there. So he's been around Money Kiffin. He's been around, and obviously Money was famous for the Tampa too, but coverage is a big thing for Raheem. And if you notice, every place that he's been, defense coordinator-wise or head coach, he's always had a stalwart corner. That's just what he believes in. He's going to go find a guy that can handle one side of the field. So that would be the first thing that comes to my mind with the glaring issues that Dallas has. And then, too, from a scheme standpoint, because we know he was heavily involved. Don't forget James Pierce, who they drafted out of Tennessee, had 10.5 sacks as a rookie. So there's development going on as well. There's the ability to coach guys up. So I would like Raheem, even though I love all three of those names.
Yeah, and I did like what I saw from Ezeraku, by the way, year one. I think he has some promise, too. I'd be interested in Gannon. I echo Marcus's thoughts on Raheem Morris, but I think Arizona is a defense that during Gagnon's tenure did a lot with a little at times. They were very creative, very unique in terms of how they approached their pressures and their coverages. Whereas Jim Schwartz, amazing, but that defense just asked your guys to play straight up and win, and that's not who Dallas is right now. Like, I do not want these corners as it is playing that much man coverage. So I think you need to inject some creativity on that side of the ball.
We'll be on to the next soon as it pertains to the Cowboys, but for 2025, we will remember this stat. They allowed 30.1 points per game. That's their most in a season since 1960. They went 0-11-1 in that 1960 season. We are just getting started here on NFL Live. And Wildcard Weekend, we've got breaking news on a busy Tuesday in the NFL as the Commanders have mutually parted ways with offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury less than a year after the team played in the NFC Championship game. Additionally, defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. will not be returning to the team, which is going to start fresh at both coordinator spots under head coach Dan Quinn. Kingsbury was, of course, hired as the Commanders' offensive coordinator prior to the 2024 season. That was Jaden Daniels' rookie year. The two went 14-10 together in Daniels' starts, compared to 3-7 in the 10 games he did not start. The touchdown-to-interception ratio was 2.6 to 1 in Jaden Daniels' starts, and 1.6 when he did not start, oftentimes that being Marcus Mariota. And with that, we say welcome into NFL Live. Dan Orlovsky right here, Mina Kimes and Swagu here as well on a very, very transactional day so far, Dan, but perhaps a bit surprising coming out of D.C. What's your reaction to this news?
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Cliff Kingsbury left Washington. Now we'll see why. If that comes out, is he going to become a head coach? Obviously, that would be a different conversation. But if he's leaving just to leave, this is a pretty significant move for Washington. And I would tell you that it's now the most pivotal decision that will be made in the NFL when it comes to the offseason and what the 2026 season looks like.
Whoa.
Jaden and this team took a significant step backwards this year, and there was a lot of reasons why. But who's going to replace Cliff Kingsbury? Because the third year for the rookie quarterback is the expected year of, hey, there comes this big jump. And there's some pieces that Washington needs outside of just that. But who's going to fill that role to take Jaden and this offense to the next level? Throw out names. Josh McCown from Minnesota. Is he ready to take the next step? Grant Udinski, who's the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, does he want to go become his own play caller? Davis Webb, who's in Denver as the quarterback coach, does he take that next step? And then maybe Mike LaFleur, who had to stop Matt's little brother with the New York Jets, now in L.A. Like, those are names right now that I think have to be at the top of a list.
I'm glad you went with names, Dan, because it feels weird to me. I think weird is the word that I would associate that with, unless Cliff Kingsbury went into the office of Dan and said, look, man, I want to try to become a head coach again, and the only way I'm going to do that if I leave this position. Now, again, you look at the record and the graphic that Phil just read off, babyface, and it was a lot of success. The injuries are a big part of the loss column for Jaden Daniels as well, not having him for a large majority of some of these seasons. So that's the first thing I thought, just weird. And I know it went bad in Washington this year, which I put more on Jaden not being available and some things obviously around him. But the only thing that I could come up with is Cliff wanted to go become a head coach in this cycle where so many jobs opened up and felt like the only way he could do it was to get out of this right now so he could start interviewing. But I thought you could do that anyway. And they would grant him permission to do so. So it just feels weird. That's the word I would associate with it.
Yeah, part of the reason why I wouldn't love this if I was a Washington fan is there are not many offensive names available, right? Like Dan was listing names. Basically, a lot of those guys are offensive coordinators who don't get to call plays, which maybe it could work out. It's a bit of a mystery. Obviously, some of the McVay guys have worked out. But, like, you know, we're going to talk about head coaching jobs and head coaching opportunities as this show goes along. I have been hard-pressed to come out with offensive options. There's a lot of really good defensive coaches. This is a bad time to need an offensive play caller in general, I think. As far as what happened in Washington and sort of the job that somebody would be taking, I put it much more on the roster and, frankly, the GM than I do on coaches on both sides of the ball, honestly. Injuries, of course, are not the GM's fault. But this was a very old roster. We knew this coming in. They bet all in on it. And as much as you like the quarterback, I think the offensive line has some good pieces. And you love McLaurin. Outside of that,
Totally.
They got to get younger on offense. So
Guys,
whoever takes this job and understanding the point, what you're getting in McDaniel or probably in Jay Daniels and whatnot, you also hope, I think, that they would add some youth on that side of the ball because they really need it.
This is an enormous hire. It really is, man. This is a special quarterback, a special player. And you either are going to completely halt where he is, or you're going to take him to the next level. It's an enormous hire.
Well, a season of retooling, or an offseason of retooling, was likely coming. In Washington, it turns out we needed about 24 hours to get to that retooling with 2